To Marguerite, continued by Matthew Arnold. This is a very, very interesting poem in so much as it gives us a lot of very interesting imagery and ideas within it. The basic message of it is that we're all islands. As human beings, we are just islands in an endless sea. We're disconnected, we're discommunicated from each other. We're no longer together, and he really feels this in himself. Moreover, he feels it in regards to a lover. We've looked at poems before where we see one flesh, or in our 10th year, and we see this idea of them being very, very together, two becoming one. No matter what problems there are, they stay together for their relationship. Matthew Arnold doesn't really subscribe to this. He's really actually saying that we're very, very separate. We're not together. And again, he questions if him and his lover can actually be as one, or if in actual fact they're separate islands. A little bit of background about this poem first. Arnold really takes it from his experience. Unlike other men, other poets who talk about two becoming one, he's very, very sure that he is truly alone. And he also goes on to imagine his partner to be as anxious as he is to overcome isolation, but isolation's a part of this era. It's written in the Victorian times, so a bit like Jekyll and Hyde, you need to take that idea of what was happening in society at the time. Indeed, it also subconsciously references a very famous metaphysical poet called John Donne, where in his devotions he wrote, "No man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main." And what he's really saying is that men and women are not islands. We're all joined together in the common human condition. Now, 200 years later, Matthew Arnold is writing this. It's a new voice, a new generation. The Anglican, or the church in general, the English church is now really in disrepute. It's full of dissent, a lot of fighting within it, corruption, doubt, and he really begins to deal with this. He also has the idea, he's also living in a world where industrialisation of central England is really, really taking hold. The Industrial Revolution is really beginning to take, and people are moving away from the countries into the cities. People are using passenger trains to get from A to B much faster than ever before. And that's really taking away the old Victorian order, if you like, a pre-Victorian order, where communities were together, where you lived in towns or you lived in countryside and so on. Okay. Let's get into the poem. Starts off with a rather emphatic yes, as if he's heard something or he's responding to something, or if an idea has just made sense to him. He says, yes, in the sea of life, nice metaphor there, in the sea of life enisled. It's a very old, archaic word there. Very old, very archaic word there, the idea of enisled. And it's, again, to throw back to the older feel of this poem. In the sea of life enisled, with echoing straits between us thrown, doting the shoreless watery wild, we mortal millions live alone. It's quite a pessimistic, quite a depressing tone to start off with. We're told with echoing straits, it's a body of water between us thrown, dotting the shoreless watery wild. It's the idea that we are islands. There's a link there with the islands. That like we are islands. And there's no shore in the ocean, obviously, and we just dot it. It's full of little islands, and these are said to be people, but they're not together, they're not connected, they're separated by the water. We're told when he uses personification, he doesn't use personification, he uses a pathetic fallacy here. Pathetic fallacy. Check out, obviously you can read my handwriting, you can't read my handwriting, check it up online. The idea of the island's feeling, and that's giving human behaviours or characteristics to, that's giving human behaviours or characteristics to the emotions and things in nature, natural things, okay, it's pathetic fallacy. So the islands feel the enclasping flow, and then their endless bounds. So what it's saying here is that these islands, metaphorically, the people, they know that they're surrounded by people. And they also know, therefore, that by water, just like an island is. And therefore, they know that they're very separate, they're not connected. Everybody knows this. This is nothing new that he's coming out with. And again, that kind of links back to that idea there. It's as if he stumbled upon something brand new, a brand new idea. But here we see that actually these islands, these people already know that this is the case, and they already know that they are absolutely by themselves and alone. Okay, we then go into, it then goes on to tell us in stanza 2, but, also it's turning the direction of it, but when the moon their hollows light, and they are swept by balms of spring, and in their glens on starry nights the nightingales divinely sing, and lovely notes from shore to shore across the sounds and channels pour. Look at the change of tone in this. It's a far more positive, far more romantic, lyrical change to what we've previously seen. We've got ideas of nature, we've got the moon, we've got the balms of spring kind of weather conditions, we've got the glens, Scottish name for kind of a mountain with water around, we've got the stars, we've got nightingales, we've got the nightingales singing, we've obviously got the shore to shore, we've got sounds and channels pour. It's full of nature imagery, which is very important. It tells us, but when the moon their hollows light, and they are swept by balms of spring. Now what that's really trying to tell us here is, well, we can really hear it very clearly in our imagination. We've got, but when the moon their hollows light, and they are swept by balms of spring. So basically, so what it's saying is the quiet island by itself at night time, again, a more peaceful time. We're told that they're swept by balms of spring. Now spring instantly has of a new start, of fertility, of everything else like that, a new beginning. It's a really youthful kind of thing. And it's very lyrical. He's talking about the beauty of nature. It's almost suggesting that, he's in stanza 1 he's realised that man and woman or society are no longer together, we're separate. And it's almost as if in stanza 2 he's actually taking that and being quite happy with it, being happy with it. So, and in their glens and starry nights, the nightingales divinely sing. Now, obviously, you can analyse this in more depth. You can find out what nightingales represent if you want to take us higher. But the idea of divinely, this links later on with the idea of God, which is mentioned. So this idea that they divinely sing, it's as if nature is connecting with heaven. Nature and heaven are becoming one. So therefore, if you take man to be an island, and you therefore take, if you take man to be an island by themselves, it's almost kind of suggesting that through nature, because an island's full of nature, it's almost suggesting that nature can help to create beauty, that actually isolation by itself is not necessarily a bad thing, and within it there's beauty, and there's a connection almost to God. The nightingales divinely sing, and lovely notes from shore to shore across the sounds and channels pour. It's this idea of communication. Even though they are very, very separate, they're able to communicate together from shore to shore. So throughout the island there's this singing, and there's an implication that obviously the birds could cross islands and sing in the other islands as well. And it's a very optimistic stanza, this. It's hoping that, things are going to be okay, which happens before we get into stanza 3. And in stanza 2, again we've got another short one-syllable word with an exclamation mark. Oh! Then a longing like despair is to their farthest caverns sent, for surely once they feel we were parts of a single continent. Now round us spreads the watery plain, O might our marges meet again. What he's saying is that a longing similar to despair, basically, to their furthest caverns sent. This is really meaning and getting the idea that everyone understands what is happening, and even the most remote people in society, even they understand this idea. They're no longer connected as one body, they're now very much separate. And then a longing like despair is to their furthest caverns sent, for surely once they feel we were, again we, and then the past tense of were, part of a single continent. Well, as we know, the world when it all started up, or when it was when it first came into being, so to speak, it was just lots and lots of land and then water. And it's over the millions of years we've seen continents separate and shift through the tectonic plates and so on. And he's really saying that we were parts of a single continent. We did used to be all together, but no longer are. And this is really, it's almost as if he's lamenting back, he's thinking back to a simpler, to an easier time when everyone really was together, everyone was close, and everybody really looked out for each other. And this is really the idea that it no longer is like this. Once upon a time, all these islands were part of a single continent, but now no longer are. And he implies that people still long for this. They still want to be part of being together, whether it be a male and a female or society. You can read it either way. He tells us now, so we've gone from being were to now, round us spreads the watery plain. Oh, might our marges meet again. By marges, he means it's the same idea as the shoreline, if you like, or the boundaries. He's really hoping that now all these islands are surrounded by water, whereas once upon a time they were all separate. So once we were all separate individuals, once we were all together as one humankind, but now we're very much spread out, very different, like islands. And he really hopes that their end might meet again one day. One day they'll become back, humankind or him and his lover will come back to being one again. And again, you can read it as a commentary on society or a commentary on his relationship, which obviously he loves, but he understands that this maybe isn't really meant to be, quite possibly, or certainly he understands that he can't be separate. He's got to be, he has to be separate, he can't be one. So it goes on to tell us in stanza 3. It goes on to tell us in stanza 3. Sorry, it's not wanting to work too well. So, sorry about that. So we've got stanza 3 here, going from the beauty and the tranquility, and then a longing like despair is to their farthest cavern sent, for surely once they feel we were parts of a single continent. Now round us spreads the watery plain, O might our marges meet again. So stanza 2, he's almost kind of become more at peace with that idea of being alone and isolated, but really in stanza 3, he really comes back to understanding, you know what, no, we do actually cry to be one. We do want to be one, whether it be in society or with a lover. We want to be one. We're both wanting it so badly, and yet there's very little we can do. We were once upon a time all connected and together, but over time that's fragmented and fallen apart. And he really, as I said here, he's really hoping that in the future, society, humans, him and his lover will be able to be one once again, and no longer two, split and separated. We then get on to the final stanza. And it's sort of the tone again, he gets quite angry here, quite annoyed about things. He says, who ordered that their longings' fire should be as soon as kindled, cooled? Who renders vain their deep desire? A god their severance ruled, and bade betwixt their shores to be the unplumbed salt estranging sea. Now, this is really quite a very interesting stanza here that it goes on to tell us. He's really, really not happy at all. He's tried to console himself, but he cannot go on anymore. And he asks, who ordered that their longings fire? So the fire that has couples who want to be together in close or society should be as soon as kindled, cooled. Who is it that said that just when you're getting somewhere in life, you're just getting close to somebody, it has to then be separated off and snapped? He goes on and asks the question again, who renders vain their deep desire? And again, obviously, alliteration there. Who renders vain their deep desire? Who makes their deep desire just absolutely in vain, just useless? And he goes on and tells us who. A god a God their servants ruled. So it's down to God. God's made it like this. It's down to God the fact that we're so separate. Although in the past we were together, it's really God's fault that we're now separate. And this is it's an impassioned force here, and real anger that comes out. But then it changes in this final couplet here. And bade betwixt their shores to be the unplumbed salt, estranging sea. This calmness, if you like, it's almost mirroring the water. It's been quite tempestuous and rough, and now it's slowing down. It's slow and it's regular paced again. It's really saying that the gulf between us have unknown depth, and in the future they may well be plumbed, they might well be brought back together, but for now there's too much of a sea between them, they're too separate. He's hoping that in the future it'll return back to as it was once, one whole continent, one whole being, one whole human condition, but he fears that, it's unlikely, to say the least. It's estranging. It keeps us strangers from each other. That's what that word means. It keeps us strangers from each other, the sea. And that could be a metaphor for life quite easily. This is permanent for him though. He asks all these questions. He's really angry about the way it's happened and what's happening. But there's not much he can do. And he understands this. He really understands this. We've got the juxtaposition of fire and cooled being here, so you've got the idea of their longing, their desire for each other being like fire, and we're then later told that it cools and it's extinguished. And again, he blames that really on God. It's God's fault that this has happened, which again goes in conflict with the beauty of nature that we saw in stanza 2. He seemed far happier with nature in stanza 2. He seemed to be accepting of it, whereas now the person who created nature, he understands, also has created this gulf, this separation between man and woman, lovers or society. I just very quickly want to go in to a few of the different ideas in here as well, a few of the different poetic techniques that we see. What we see is it's written mostly in iambic. Written mostly iamically. So who ordered that their longings fire should be as soon as kindled cooled. And this is something that goes on all throughout the poem. Although you can argue that it's not necessarily the strictest use of iambic. You couldn't say it's iambic pentameter because we get here parts of a single continent. So again, it shifts with the iamb to a trochee there, from a unstressed stress to stressed unstressed, and he plays about it. It's relatively regular iambs that are used, unstressed, stressed, but there are moments in the poem where this changes. Make sure that you go through the poem in your own time, analyse it and find where these changes are, because that obviously you can relate that to the motion of the water, the way the sea is, the way the sea moves, the way that life and their relationship gets more difficult, and so on as well. What I would ask you to do is to really go through the poem carefully, looking for all your poetic techniques and thinking about what they suggest. This is a very brief overview of the poem, an overview of everything that happens within it. Make sure that you're taking notes, you're annotating your own ideas, and I've really not annotated a lot of poetic technique or word choice here. Make sure that you use a dictionary so that you understand what the vocabulary means, and then from there you can annotate it and analyse it in a lot more depth. So remember to be focusing on the tone. Think about the tone that these stanzas are said in, are discussed in, if you like. It's really a very strong tone, and it starts off being quite frustrated to being quite accepting about it, and at the end he's actually quite angry. He's frustrated with the way that the world is and the way that the world works and the way society or his love, his relationship has gone. So think about the tone, think about word choice, poetic techniques, look at caesura and enjambment. Here we go, for example. I'll just very quickly erase this bit here so I can Oh no, it's not wanting to erase. That's absolutely fine. Pick another one here. 2 seconds. Well, I'll do this one here. You can see here the enjambment there and there. For surely once they feel we were. So what the caesura does is it breaks up the pace of the poem. It forces you to take a pause, and it also emphasises. It says, for surely once they feel we were parts of a single continent. He's using the caesura to break it up and to emphasise the points he's making. What he's also quite cleverly doing here is that you see here a single continent with no caesura or anything, whereas we see here, we see enjambment being used, the running on of lines without punctuation. For surely once they feel we were parts of a single continent. And it's really the commas there, the caesura there, is really trying to emphasise that separation even more. And that's something that's throughout all these kind of poems, writers regularly use caesura to really try and show separation, and enjambment to try to get to show togetherness. So it makes sense. For surely once, caesura, they feel caesura, we were parts of a single continent. Listen to the way it sounds. The fragmented, isolated parts are very slow, and then we get the enjambment, we were parts of a single continent, all together, all united. So go through the poem, make sure you fully understand it, and any questions, obviously make sure that you write them down and bring them to class with you.